Hello everyone, welcome to the Among Us series, where I discuss every role officially added to Among Us. I want to see which roles are good and which roles are bad, and I want to know what makes a role balanced. For the players who haven't played Among Us, or haven't played in a long time, basically Among Us is a social deduction game that can hold up to 4 to 15 players. 1 to 3 of those players will be imposters, and their whole purpose is to kill all the other crew members without getting caught. They are able to use events, kill, and sabotage, and if some of those sabotages aren't resolved in time, the game will end and it will act as their second win condition. Imposters will also know who their teammates are. Crewmates, on the other hand, can't tell each other apart. Their goal is to figure out who the imposters are and eject them via a majority vote. They have no abilities other than calling an emergency meeting or reporting a body, which starts a meeting phase. The only other thing you can do as a crewmate is your task, and if every other crewmate completes all of their tasks, then the crew will win through a task victory, which is their second win condition. Now that we know the basic and default rules about Among Us, it's time to talk about the engineer. The engineer was one of the first 3 crewmate roles added to Among Us back in 2021. Yes, I know, 5 years ago. It was released alongside the Scientist, Guardian Angel, and the Shapeshifter, and the role is extremely simple. You're a basic crewmate, but with the ability to use the vents, just like the imposters. It was designed with the purpose of creating more questions and chaos to the lobby, and that's because it bends the rules of classic Among Us where only the imposters can vent. Therefore, it adds uncertainty. Even if the engineer exists in the lobby and never vents, if you see a player vent, it doesn't mean they're 100% confirmed the imposter. And on default, the engineer can stay in the vents for about 15 seconds upon entering, and after hopping out they have to wait another 30 seconds before they can vent again. Another important thing to note is that the engineer is completely invincible in the vents, so once you hop into a vent, you become invincible for a maximum of 15 seconds, as well as imposters can't tell if you are hiding inside the vents. Before we get started, I'm Rocketstar. I make videos and social deduction games, so if you end up enjoying this video, you'll definitely enjoy my other videos. But right now, I'm trying to build an active community, so if we reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I'll do a giveaway for the active members in my Discord. Anyway, now that we understand the engineer, let's look at the problems. The first issue we come across is that fundamentally, every Among Us role is just crewmate, but with an ability, which makes the crewmate just a better crewmate compared to a crewmate without a power. But luckily this doesn't apply so greatly to the engineer, and that's why I wanted to start this series with the engineer compared to another role. The engineer technically harms the crewmate team because it gives more questions for the imposter to jump on and manipulate. And that's a good thing for a crewmate role. You want the ability to give a unique trade-off to both sides, so it's balanced for the flow of the game while still keeping the variety. In our case, giving more questions to the imposters for the ability to use the vents. Otherwise, the game lets crewmates fight back in a way where it only harms the imposters, who are already at a disadvantage due to how a social deduction game works. What you'd want is a positive balanced out by a negative, so it's balanced. So my question is the positive of the engineer venting balanced out by the negative of giving imposters more questions and mind games? And to answer that, we have to look at how the imposters vent. The vents in Among Us typically connect to 2 to 3 vents, unless you're playing Mirror HQ. All the vents on that map somehow just connect to each other. There is also a vent bug that allows players to see anyone using the vents even if they're not in the same room. However, this only affects snappers and vents, not the holes on Polus. And before the engineer was added, vents were solely given to the imposters to give them an advantage over the crew. Not only does it let them travel to a different room and get a kill that usually wouldn't be possible timing-wise, it also allows you to merge it with closing doors, locking a crew member in a room that only you can enter. Another useful option, a given about the vents, is being able to wait patiently, hiding in plain sight for as long as you want. Crewmates have no indication if an imposter is in a vent unless they've watched them enter it in the first place. And it's important to note that there is no way to tell if a second imposter is hiding in the same vent with you. Now when we look at the engineer, you can use the same vents designed for the imposters. That means you can't be locked into certain rooms if the imposter closes doors on you, and the imposters can't safely use vents or kill around the vents. And that's because there's no telling if the engineer is watching. It doesn't actually matter if the time limit is 5 seconds or 15 seconds, there's always going to be a chance that you're being watched. And this basically severely hurts the tools given to the imposter team. They can't 100% lock someone in a room, and they can't vent or kill safely without an off chance of unfairly being caught. And the worst part is that even if you know that an engineer is in the vent, you can't kill them until they leave, which gives time for a body to be reported or an emergency meeting to be called. Imposters shouldn't have their tools taken away from them. They're supposed to be the ones controlling the game. The engineer damages the imposter's kit because of 2 main reasons: being invincible to the imposters and restricting areas of play. And that's because imposters will have to avoid events if they want to safely kill, which now leaves them only one escape route, by foot, effectively halving the options to escape and restricting the safe areas to make a kill. Strong areas to kill like electrical are no longer safe, for an example. However, there are two ways to counter a role's ability, and this one works with every role in the game. The communication sabotage. It effectively removes all of role's abilities until the comms are fixed, but for some reason it starts to cool down immediately. If you look carefully, you can see the cooldown going down even though the communications are still sabotaged. Another issue is that you can't close the doors while a sabotage is going on, and you can't start a sabotage while any of the doors are shut. This was implemented to stop the imposter from stalling time, and that would result in players not making it to the reactor or the O2 sabotage in time, essentially just making it really easy for the imposter to win that way. But the communication sabotage doesn't end the game, and it's not very powerful or a popular sabotage. Wouldn't it be fair to buff it so you can close the doors during the communication sabotage? I also just don't think the communication sabotage is an effective way of dealing with crewmate roles. When you have the engineer in mind, you'd have to sabotage the communications if you want to kill near a vent, instead of just being able to sabotage the lights or closing doors. And that's just to secure the kill safely. But also if you play like that, you'll just basically announce when you've killed someone. While I was editing this video, I found a funny design flaw. If you see an engineer getting kicked out of a vent during a comm sabotage, it essentially clears them and confirms their role. And this is because imposters can't sabotage while in a vent. So you know that player didn't sabotage the comms while they were inside that vent. Technically with 2 imposters it's possible to pull off, but the amount of luck and coordination you'd need in a game that doesn't let you talk to your imposter buddy is so insane that you'll never see this in an actual match. Editing me too here. I actually found an exploit that allows you to sabotage while in the vents. What you want to do is open the sabotage menu and then press the vent keybind. So that means if your version of Among Us doesn't have a vent keybind, then you can't do it. So I'm looking at you mobile gamers. Anyway, back to the video. The second way to quote-unquote counter it is to claim to be the engineer. But that's a gamble because if an engineer is still alive, then they'll counterclaim. And if they counterclaim, then the imposter is 100% confirmed to be between the accuser and the person accused. That's 2 people, and one of them has to be the imposter. So if you vote both of them, then you're guaranteed to have gotten rid of one imposter, and that's very powerful information for the crewmates. These aren't very good ways to deal with the role, especially when you can just turn off the engineer and you don't have to deal with this at all. And that's simply because of how easily abusable the engineer role is. Even though that the concept is good, it makes me believe that the negative doesn't outweigh the positives. So how do we balance the role? Well, it's actually pretty simple. We've identified the problem, which is that the engineer is invincible when they're inside the vents, and that the imposter doesn't know if an engineer is spying on them. Now what do we do about that? And I've already come up with a couple suggestions, or I wouldn't have made the video. For the invincibility issue, simply just make it that you can kill inside the vents. If you're in the same vent as the engineer, the kill icon highlights. If you kill the engineer, make it that the body gets spat out the vent, or make it that the body stays in the vent and can't be reported. And speaking on the topic of vents, I have some suggestions. Number 1. Please fix the vent bug, and just make it a setting to keep it for those who want it. Number 2. Make it an option for the kill cooldown to decrease in vents, or at least halfway. And what I mean is, if the kill cooldown is 30 seconds, make the vent decrease up to 15 seconds. So if you have 15 seconds left, you won't get punished for sitting in a vent. I don't actually know why the kill cooldown pauses in vents. If you're not present, you don't have an alibi, which usually comes down to only you being able to make the kill. If you guys can debunk the kill cooldown in vents, I'd love to hear in the comments. Number 3. I don't know why this isn't a thing, but I would love to be able to open the sabotage window while hiding in a vent. Being inside of a vent and closing a door sounds amazing, and it should already be in the game. If they implement that, it might also be interesting to see the Shapeshifter and the Phantom being able to use their abilities inside the vents. And while we're on the topic of buffing just gameplay mechanics, I'd also want to buff the communication sabotage like I said earlier, being able to affect doors while the communications are sabotaged, and I'd also make it that crewmates with roles pause their cooldown until the sabotage is resolved. I also think it'd be good if crewmates couldn't do their tasks during a communication sabotage. It'd be really nice to have different types of customization for individual sabotages, much like how the taskbar is configurable. Back to talking about the engineer, the second issue is that the engineer has the lack of information if you're being spied on. I think the main point of the role, which is to add more questions and uncertainty surrounding the vents, is good, and should be the only purpose of the role. But the ability to harm the imposters without a fair downside, or at least a proper way to counter it, that's bad. and that I don't think that was the original intention of the role. As I said earlier, it was to create questions and uncertainty, not to fight back. So what I'll do is to give the imposters a way to tell if an engineer is hiding inside of a vent. If they're in a vent, then visually show little eyes staring behind the vent, or a head poking out of a hole. And doing so, it will now allow the imposter to do their imposter activities without being punished. I think with these suggestions that I've brought up, it would keep the main point of the engineer, which is to give a round more possibilities and questions, without it from having power over the imposters. But there is one thing that I want to say. If they're going to add any of these suggestions that I've made, make it an optional setting. Don't just force it into the base kit, make sure it's an optional tickable box. Same as the vent settings I mentioned earlier. Give players the customization controls to change the lobby to their liking. And I understand that there are mods out there to fix these problems already, but modding isn't accessible to all players and it's actually pretty difficult than just the Steam Workshop. So either bring these settings to the main game, or make modding more accessible. And that's everything I want to cover about the engineer role. So if you've made it to the end of the video, it probably means that you like analyses of social deduction games, which if you want to see more, check out the channel and subscribe for future videos. And if you'd like to help me get footage for these videos, join the Discord. And that's all I have to say. See you next time.